Okay. All right. Welcome. We're going to do some fun explorations. I'm Kaylin Castell here with Zoe Flowers, and we've been having an interesting challenge with getting our time together. So now we're talking about time. We got interrupted a couple of times trying to put things together. So here we are.
Mhm.
One of the things is that we are recording this in the cross quarter time of Samhain, also known as the November cross quarter. And there may be other ways that it's been described, but we just had Halloween, and it is the time where we honor the dead, we honor the ancestors, we honor the all the souls of that are living and past and gone on, or whatever that's about. And what's interesting about this time is that the actual astrological cross quarter occurs usually on November 7th, sometimes on November 6th, depending on your time zone, a little bit different depending on where you are on the planet. And it's when the sun reaches 15 degrees Scorpio. That is the exact halfway point between the 0 degrees September equinox and the 0 degrees Capricorn solstice, December solstice. This marks the exact halfway point. The sun has reached the halfway point between the two. In the Celtic tradition, they saw this time Samhain as the new year. The veils between the worlds being the thinnest, they could access their do their visioning and their dreaming and access information from the ancestors, and that otherworldly connection kind of thing was going on. And so it was very important to them. What happened, and they were looking at things from a cyclical point of view. So then they saw the December solstice in the northern hemisphere, it's the winter solstice, as midwinter. Of course, it's the opposite season in the southern hemisphere. And so they saw this as the start of their winter. And the Celtic cultures living in further northern latitudes, it really was the start of their winter. I live kind of south in Tucson, Arizona, so it's not so much here. But I get that. And then what happened was we got the Gregorian calendar in the 1580 something, late 1500s. And it what it did was it fixated our consciousness on linear time. So clock time and linear time monthly. They start the year on an arbitrary date, January 1st. It's not even connected to a solstice or an equinox. It's like used to be the spring equinox was the New Year's point. And the reason that they called people they called people fools, April Fools became a thing, was because they were still celebrating the new year and around the spring equinox. And so they were fools for doing that. And they shamed them into celebrating January 1st as the New Year's point. So there's been this interesting manipulation of time. And it's not that it's what we have is a bad thing, but it does fixate our awareness on more material linear reality. So what we're doing here is also remembering cyclical time, sacred time, and how we can engage the seasons and the cycles and the moon phases, which was very important to ancient cultures. And we've lost that, especially being more attuned to calendar time and clock time. So here we are at this cross quarter, veils between the worlds being thinner, and we're honoring the ancestors. And I'm going to turn this over to you now, Zoe, because I know you have some specific ways of looking at it. We know what the Celts did. That was their new year. There may have been other cultures that had that as their new year time as well. But I'm just excited to hear what you have to say
Mhm.
this time.
Yeah, well, I'm writing notes because so you were talking about the this change in the calendar and this linear way of looking at time. But even this piece about April Fool's Day, which you have said before, so what I wrote down is also manipulating language, shaming people for their traditions and their celebrations. and how destabilizing that is. And so when we think about things like SAD or seasonal affect disorder, I wonder if this destabilization is because we don't have these markings, these celebrations, these rituals that we used to have, that we used to observe. And I'm like the grand we. And if on some level that destabilization is coming out in different ways. So I was sharing with you that Yeye Louisa Tish, who wrote the book Jambalaya, to yesterday, they started their 9-day ancestor elevation time. So this is a big celebration. I think it's also a celebration on the continent. There's drummers and there are all these things that are going to be happening for the next, well, now I guess it would be the next 8 days. And then of course we have Dia de los Muertos, also celebrated in places like Mexico and that. And it's so funny because when I did my reading yesterday, I got the Lady de los Muertos. Can you believe it?
That's amazing.
On when I did my Instagram live, there it was. So yeah, there's so many different cultures that celebrated this time in all of these different ways. So I just find it fascinating, the limited history, we have about the other cultures.
Yes. Yes. And also, what are the traditions we're doing now?
Mm-hmm.
I know here in Tucson, they do an
Mm-hmm.
All Souls procession
Mm-hmm.
here around the cross quarter time. It's usually on a Sunday, so it's not always on the exact day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be, I think, pretty close to the exact day. I think it's going to be on the exact day actually this year.
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that? Because it happens to be on a Sunday, November
Mm-hmm.
7th. And the honoring of the ancestors and those who have passed, and the tuning into when the veils between the worlds are thin, and when we can dream into what it is that we're dreaming into and really anchor intentions. And so this is how we create magic, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
attention,
Yeah.
attention to the intention, and so on. So that's what we're here to remind people, and to remind you also of the power of the cyclical or the seasonal cycles that we experience
Yes.
all the time. And the Celts often use the new moon or the full moon closest to the cross quarter point to do their celebrations. Now, here's the thing. It used to be around the 1st of November when the sun was at 15 degrees Scorpio. It's now the 7th of November because it moves 1 degree every 72 years. So over hundreds of years, it's going to shift a bit through time. And Halloween, of course, was decided to be October 31st as that time, because it's kind of close, you know.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so we celebrate Halloween, but how do we do that now? We do that by going trick or treating and dressing up, and that's all fun and it's great for kids and lots of candy.
And I think that does harken back to some of the early celebrations, right? Like we dress up so the spirits can't see us or whatever, and we have the treat for them so they don't trick us. So I'm glad that some of that has been able to survive. But the other thing that's coming up for me is, as a way to get yourself back grounded and stabilize with so much destabilization, we don't have to wait for these major holidays to celebrate, right? We can tune into the day of the week because we know that the days of the week, each day has a certain vibration, it has a certain signature, it's named after a planet or a god, right? And so we could pick those days to do our magic. One of the things that I do, because I've been working with Venus now for a year, that was something that came to me, is I don't work on Fridays. I don't do formal work on, sometimes I get sucked in, but most of the time I don't, right? It's like, because that is my day. That is a day for my self-love. That is a day for self-love rituals. It's like I'm getting a facial this Friday, right? So we can do things to tune us in, to stabilize us. We don't have to wait for like consumer time to get on the bandwagon,
I love that you said that, because Friday is Freya's day, and Freya
Yes.
in the Norse from the Norse perspective was Venus. And so
Yes.
it's Venus's day, so they named it Friday after her. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's really beautiful. And we can tune into those energies on a daily basis, as
Mm-hmm.
well as cyclical, weekly, monthly,
Mm-hmm.
moon, full moon, all that. We will have a new moon on November 13th. And
Mm-hmm.
that is when the Celts and probably other cultures might have also done some of their bigger ceremonies, because it was also a new moon in the cross quarter time.
On a Monday, Moon
On
Day. I
a
think this would
right.
be an amazing day, especially if we want to throw in the numerology, right? So 13, we bring that down to 4. So if there are any emotions or things like that that people are finding they're destabilized, because of, Monday could be a nice day to do that work.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
That new,
mhm,
and it's a Scorpio new moon.
mhm,
And something else to know, uh, I love talking about this, is that when the sun reaches 15 Scorpio, it is now aligned with a star. You don't see the star because the sun's there, with a star called Zubin el-Janubi. And
mm,
it is one of the pans of the scales, the constellation of the scales. Now, the scales is often also called Libra, but
mm,
the seasonal signs are different than the constellations. And so 15 degrees Scorpio now overlays Zubin el-Janubi, meaning that it's at that cross quarter point. And so it's about the swing between the worlds. And I'll put a link to an article that I've written more about that in the show notes. But the swing between the worlds, and also the pans of the scales. And the scales, if we look back to the Egyptian times,
mhm,
this is when somebody died, Anubis was weighing the heart of the dead with the feather of Ma'at. And I think I was just having this realization, like I've always, the feather is about justice and about, how well we're doing. And Ma'at is all about keeping the cosmic balance and all of that.
mhm.
And so if your heart's heavier than the feather, then you will reincarnate. If it's lighter, then you get to go on to some other the duat, they called it, the
Mhm,
the realm beyond this realm kind of thing.
mhm, mhm.
Well, if you think about the feather could also represent mind, the air qualities, the mind. So
Yes.
it's weighing
Yep.
the heart and the
Right.
mind
That's right. I
on
love that.
oh, I know. And it's like, so if our heart is heavy, we've been using it, whatever. I don't know exactly how to take that another step. I just had this thought. So,
I can take it. I can
oh,
take it.
good. Yay.
Leave it to the air sign. I can take it.
Aha. Cool.
Because air, right? So we live in the mind, right? So we live in the mind. And what is the thing that takes us under most times is the mind. If we believe that thoughts are things and we're so heavy with resentments and things like that that happen to us on the earthly plane, of course our mind is going to be heavier than our heart, because the mind is the thing that takes us under every time. Because when I think about it, it's like, even if somebody does us wrong, where does that live? It lives in the mind. Where do we replay slights, resentments, all of those things? In the mind.
Yeah.
So the mind has to be, so our work should around dumping the mind,
Yes.
dumping out the mind, lightening the mind.
Yes. So Zubin el-Janubi is one of the pans of the scales, and Zubin el-Shamali, another star that's around 21 degrees Scorpio, is the other pan of the scales. Now, Zubin el-Janubi is right on the ecliptic, and the sun passes right with it when it's there every year. The new moon is going to be with Zubin el-Shamali, the other pan of the scales. So what is it that we're bringing into balance within us, the heart and mind, ideally? And when the heart and mind are unbalanced, one's not outdoing the other necessarily. Although if one's going to outdo the other, we hope it's the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Leave it hope.
Yeah. So what an amazing time to have this new moon, to have the sun with Zubin el-Janubi, then have the sun with Zubin el-Shamali. I mean, the moon with Zubin el-Shamali at the new moon. The sun and the moon will have moved to that point.
Wow.
at the new moon. And so it's like really drawing our attention to the scales.
Yeah.
So cool. And the
In
other
Scorpio season.
one other thing that's happening with this is Mars is with the sun. So Mars is with the new moon as well. Mars is in the underworld. And
Mhm.
so what is it that is from the masculine perspective is dying to be
Mm,
what needs to die so something new can be reborn in our experience of the masculine,
mhm.
whether that's within, everybody has a masculine aspect within them. Men, of course, have a feminine aspect within them, but depending on gender identification, I know there's a lot of things about that, but basically we've had this polarity that we've been working with for such a long time. And
Mhm.
so how is it that the two things can come together and work with each other instead of work against each other?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the patriarchy that's been in the role of domination and control. And so
Mhm.
how is it that we can maybe intend at this time that we're letting go of that old paradigm and we're moving into a time, it's not about a matriarchy, it's not about a patriarchy. It's not about the feminine being more important or the masculine being more important, which is what we've tended to play out. It's about how are both equally imbalanced and important. and not equal in that they're the same, equal in that they're of equal value.
So maybe that's the reading, because I wanted to talk about how do we get stabilized. And I think that's perfect, right? What needs to die so that we can be more balanced? I feel like that is a great, and what needs to be embraced. Sometimes when I do that reading, the answer reveals itself, but I think what do we need to let go of? So that is a tarot question, isn't it? I mean, it can be oracle too, but so for the collective at this time, what needs to go? What needs to die? Huh. Hmm. Ooh. Ooh, ooh. Okay. All right. So we have, oh, I have to show this one too, of course. So we have, even though this didn't come out first, it struck my eye. So we have the 10 of Cups in reverse. So we're starting with the 10 of Cups in reverse. So that's where we are, right? The house is upside down. Like we're in the upside down. For people who watch Stranger Things,
That's exactly.
right? Like we're in the upside down. So fine, we get it. We know that. In the upright, this is like happy family, rainbows, blah, 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 blah. Okay. We know that's not where most of us are. All right, fine. And why might that be? Hmm? Well, we have the King of Wands in the upright.
Mm.
Now, Wands has to do with action, and here we are talking about the patriarchy. So maybe we've paid a little bit too much attention to this going and pushing and striving and defending, right? Because that's what kings do. I'm surprised we don't have the emperor card here, but this will do, right? Because, and of course, this is wands or fire energy, Aries, Sagittarius, Leo. And so we know how these can be when they're enlightened, but when they're in the shadow. So maybe, Kaylin, do you want to talk about like when that wand energy, when fire energy is a little wonky versus when it's more enlightened?
Yeah, well, I love that because the first thing that came to my mind was um I'm in a book club. It's called Unplugging the Patriarchy. I'll put a link to it if people want to join us. It's a free book club, but we're looking at how are we undoing all the mystic wand makes me think of magic.
Yeah.
All of the mystic energy that has been put into this earth and into the people and into our systems
Mm-hmm.
so that there's power and control of an elite few.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really the essence of what has been the patriarchy. So how are we going to create magic that it's not about fighting it, because fighting it only gives it energy.
That's right.
It's about transmuting and transforming it so that it
Yeah.
actually can now serve all people, all life, the planet herself, all of her plants and animals and everything. So how do we do that?
Well,
Yeah. So you've got the answer. I love it.
well, we were just talking about Chronos. And so how do we do that? So we have the devil here, which is represented. So the devil correlates to Capricorn in the tarot. And so this is a card of punishment, sadomasochism, but the word that's coming to me the most is addictions, because this is very much a card of addictions and being tied to something. And you can even see how bound they are. In the Rider-Waite version, the more traditional tarot, it's a man and a woman. So it's interesting that there are two women here, especially since we're talking about the patriarchy, right? And so it's like, first we have to detach. We have to detach from this thing that's keeping us bound. So isn't it funny that we have the king and then we have the devil here, right? So the things we're addicted to, the things we don't want to give up, which means, right? Because sometimes we benefit from the patriarchy as well, right? And so it's like, how do we detach from that devil? Well, it's work, but we've got the 7 of Wands, right? So more wands here, more wands, more sort of meeting this devil at its heart. And it's funny how the hand is coming out of the heart, right? It's kind of piercing the heart. So this is more of a fighting, so to say, card in a way, because you're like defending your position, you're standing your ground. So we do have to stand our ground, I would say, for the heart here, to get to the heart of the matter. And then after that, we love to see the 3 of Cups. This is a card of celebration. So we start with the house upside down, cups, and we end with celebration, cups.
Yay, I love that. And it's
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and when we are attuned from the perspective of the heart, that's love, and love is what heals everything. Love is what transforms everything. Love is the answer. And so we tune into how are we transmuting and transforming through the power of love, through the power
And
of the heart, through love.
And so, because cups represent our water signs, our Pisces, our Scorpio, here we are in Scorpio season, and Cancer, perhaps we look to the way our water sign siblings move through life, and maybe the way they transmit their emotions, how they emote, how they are sensitive, right? And so again, like looking to Pisces, looking to Scorpio, looking to Cancer, and seeing how they transmit their emotions, how they make sense of the world, and maybe emulating that. You know, in the very beginning of Libra season, so many of my readings were just like, act like a Virgo, just act like a Virgo, like just dot your T's, dot your I's, cross your T's, like be like a Virgo, be consistent. That was so much of the reading for the beginning of October. And now here we are being like, hey, maybe act like a water sign.
Flow.
Pretend you're a Scorpio.
And feel what you feel. And sometimes the challenge to get to the place of love, like if we've been hurt, if we've been, as you were talking about, like somebody's done us wrong or something's happened that has been really painful for us to go through, we need to feel that, but not necessarily take it out on the person or the situation or whatever it was that caused it. Just give yourself permission to feel angry, hurt, sad, wail, keen, cry, scream into a pillow, beat on the pillow, whatever you need to do to get that out. Move emotion, put that feeling into motion so that it's not staying inside of you and determining unconsciously the things that you're doing.
Yeah. And the last thing I have, and you're gonna like this. So I just randomly, as you were talking, sometimes I just split the deck, and we got hibiscus here. So I love hibiscus. I was at the store the other day with my mom. I was like, oh, I want some hibiscus tea. I love hibiscus. And the message here with hibiscus is joy, and it resonates to Pluto and Venus.
Ooh.
So maybe making yourself some hibiscus tea when you're doing your ritual. And just like Caitlin said, get your feelings out, your joy. I mean, your pain, your anger, your rage. However you need to do that, go to one of those rooms where you can beat stuff. You know, they have those now. And then maybe having yourself some hibiscus tea. I would recommend for the month of November bringing in hibiscus as much as possible to transform, since we have Pluto here. And last thing, it is card number 14. So in numerology, we would bring that to 5. 5 is freedom. So one of the keys to freedom, joy.
Beautiful. Oh, love that so much. Oh my gosh.
So good.
So good.
We love it.
I think that's what we have for you for this month. We're very excited to share this with you, and we look forward to whenever we get back together again and sharing whatever else comes up for us. But I feel like we're on a powerful journey, and that we're doing this together, and the power of doing this together is exponentially increasing the intention. And I love it that everything's upside down, but we move through these steps and we get to joy. That is just so brilliant.
Right.
Beautiful.
Celebration. And this is celebration in community. So we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I hope everyone has a fabulous November.
Yes.
Bye.